Hi everyone, it's another episode of Database, and today we want to talk about, well, I was thinking about introduced as Power BI CI/CD, but now with Fabric, it's actually getting a little bit bigger, and it's such a very exciting space because as a dev, been working with Power BI for a very long time, and one of the pain thing in Power BI is always I can't really collaborate very well with other developers. If it's a big report, only one of us can make a change at a time. And if we both do it at the same time, then there's really no way of actually combining the work a bit later on. There's a way, but it's just like very, very clunky. Until very recently, they've released the Power BI project of extension, so PBIP file extension. And also at the same time, from the workspace side, there is the Git integration as well. And then we also have all this Fabric stuff happening in the background too. So it's such an exciting time in this space. I'm so glad to have MJ here today, who has been a developer for a long time. Before we jump into the content, how do you feel about the whole thing, MJ?
And I really think this is a very long overdue thing for data, right? Before this, we keep talking about DevOps, then data ops, LLM ops, ML ops, and it's like trying to operationalize data. But if you come to think of it, a lot of it are principles from DevOps, and now we're just kind of like expanding that to something like Fabric or Power BI. And someone who came from a developer background, a lot of these things were like Git and version control should just be there. It's just like how you save documents, right? You need a SharePoint or OneDrive to put it somewhere. It's better that way than not having anything. So I guess really I'm kind of excited that the whole data industry is also moving to that direction, where the dev industry has already matured quite enough already.
Yeah, amazing. Couldn't agree with you more. Let me share my screen and jump into a scenario. And we both felt like it's probably be a lot easier if we actually talk about this via scenario. So I might start in the Power BI workspaces. So there's two broad concepts here. So I have workspaces. I've got three workspaces for the demo purpose. The sales and marketing, this is production. And then the next one is developer workspace. And the last one is a testing/staging workspace. So these are almost like three separate environments. The benefit of this is I can set my development to talk to a development database that doesn't contain any production data or test data. In the test environment, the data is very close to production, might be a little bit delayed, so I can use that for testing without impacting any of the production stuff. And then finally, if everything's good, then we move that into production. So Power BI, so the premium workspace already have this pipeline function that allows you to keep separate environments. So that was pretty exciting at the time. And we'll jump into a bit of that a bit later on. But on the other side, let's say I am in the test branch at the moment. So right now, there's also in the workspace settings, there's this amazing Git integration as well. So this allows me to tap into a particular folder in my repo. So so this workspace is linked to one of the folders, meaning my team repo can have multiple folders like for different purposes as well. So I think that's a really good setup from that regards. At the moment, correct me if I'm wrong, the workspaces only work with Azure DevOps repos?
Yes, yes, for now. In the future, GitHub will be supported, which is the most exciting support I've been waiting for, and I guess the most requested feature as well.
Yeah, can't wait, can't wait. But this is already very exciting. What we want to go through today, so MJ, especially when you're coming from a developer background, I would love to give you a scenario, and then maybe you can actually tell me and the users how you might actually set it up, configure it to actually make this scenario work. So I have a analytics team. Let's say under the team there are developers, and there are also BAU support people as well.
Mhm.
And this analytics team want to do release on a weekly basis. So every Friday, let's say, they will push all the changes in on like agreed changes in on Friday. They have a, let's say, a review meeting on Thursday, one day before they push it out. And this is going to happen on a weekly basis. The developers will obviously want to continue to develop whatever without stopping. But the deployment workspace, the production workspace should only be changed on a weekly basis. So yeah, from your perspective,
Yeah.
MJ, how do you think this can be configured to make that scenario work?
Absolutely, right? Like, so, well, first and foremost, again, just to personify, right? Like, you have the developers, then you have the BAU people, and probably you might have a manager or like, someone who approves this, right?
Yep.
So in that regards, like, first things first is that having Git, which what you're already showing me in the screen, is the first thing that's needed, regardless, right? For the reason alone that these developers, it's most likely you want to save your changes, right? In case your machine blows up or any other
Yeah.
reason, right? Like, you don't want to lose all the reports just because it's in your machine and like there's no way to recover it, right? So but then at that scenario, it's nowhere different from this saving to SharePoint or OneDrive, right? Now, the compelling reason why you probably want to use Git is that, okay, now you were able to save it centrally somewhere. Now I want to make sure that I can actually version it, meaning, okay, yesterday I worked on this change. I can commit this, or aka save this and like commit and push it to the repository. And then tomorrow I'll work on, another version of it, and another version of it, and another version of it, so on and so forth as days go by. To your point earlier, right? Like, these developers can just keep continue doing changes regardless. So that means that with that regards, developers can just keep on pushing and pushing, their changes, and these are not really tied into a specific release window. That capability of making changes, right? Um, so that means that there's also a concept of like versioning forward, meaning you keep making changes, but there's also a concept of rolling backwards, right? Like, actually I made a mistake. Now I want to go back to how I did it yesterday. So there's that concept of like going back and forth with a certain like point in time when you actually made that commit. So that's really powerful, right? Because that means that you don't have to do something like report underscore one final, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that type of thing, right? You totally remove that, equation, right? So that solves the developer equation, right? Like, you and
Yeah.
I can now work seamlessly. You review my work, I review your work, and we're happy to land on develop. So what that means is that in that regards, Dave, if you go to Power BI release environment, so when you and I are happy with what's in develop, that gets deployed to that development environment, right? So each time
Yep.
there's a pull request, you know, and that's purge, that gets to development. And this
So just
development, yeah,
so
go on.
if I just take a very quick step back. So what you're saying is, instead of going with one main branch, we should have three separate branches. So maybe a
Mhm.
main for production, a testing for testing, and then a development branch as well.
Correct,
So from the workspace, so this one is the test workspace. The test workspace in the Git integration, it will actually connect to the
like testing
testing
branch. Yeah,
branch. And then the development workspace will connect to the development branch. So
correct.
when we then collaborate or working on different things, we can create a pull request onto in the development branch. Someone reviews it. Does it need to be reviewed at that point,
Yeah,
or we
it
can
needs to
just
be reviewed. Yeah, always needs to be
okay,
reviewed. At
always
least
needs
a
to be
best
reviewed.
practice, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah. So
review
even
before
if
merging. Yeah, yeah.
even if it's in the dev branch, still
Yes,
be reviewed, and then you get merged in there. So but once that's merged, it will be that change will be could be a new report, could be a new page of the report that will come into the development workspace now.
correct.
So I don't have to hit publish from Power BI, let's say,
Hmm.
into here. It will just be here once I synchronize with the repo.
Right.
So now the interesting thing is I've got this deploy thing,
Hmm.
right?
Actually, multiple ways to do this, right? When you get out of that developed environment. So think of it this way. In Power BI Fabric point of view, you can still have this multi-environment setup even without Git integration, right? Like that
Yep.
basically means that, when you click that deploy button in development, that gets deployed, all those files in development, now that gets deployed to test, right? And then
Yeah,
you
I
can
do
actually
have a
look at
change in
their,
here actually. So there's a change in here, and then if I hit deploy, it will move
exactly,
into test. Yeah. Okay.
exactly, right? And again, this process, regardless if you have Git or without Git integration in that workspace setting, this will work, right? However, what's not gonna, like some of the real goodness of why you still wanna sync it to Git in Azure DevOps is that how are you gonna roll back from here, right? Like let's say,
Yeah, that's
that
true.
if you move to test, then let's say you're not happy with that one. Now, how are you gonna roll back? So the only way to do it
Yeah.
is by Git, right? You roll back it from Git.
Yeah, I guess in the old days, there's like OneDrive or SharePoint folder that can allow a bit of version control, but yeah, that's always like not ideal. Whereas in this world, the best way to roll back now is via Git.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Yep.
here's the other thing as well to consider, right? This setup where you're looking at the moment works because you're in one tenant, right? Like you're in that one David Ding tenant.
Yep.
But what if you have separate Active Directories or Entra IDs or different tenant per environment, which happens to other, big corporations out there, right? That's
Yeah.
not gonna work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. True.
Because they're
True.
like
Yeah.
different tenant then.
Yeah.
However, via Git, you can, right? For as long as
Yes.
they can, talk to one same Git repository,
Yep.
doesn't matter. It's just gonna be a different view. However, right? Like it's gonna be like a lonely view of without that deploy button. But
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you can still kind of like version it together that, in the other tenant, when you do a pull request from develop to test, then
Mm.
that changes gets deployed to that other tenant. And so it
Yep.
goes to the other tenant. So that's the other consideration as well, why Git is really powerful.
Yeah. Um, and then I guess just following on from that, that change in development has now been pushed into the test branch via Git integration.
Hmm.
And then it will be reviewed, it will be tested. Once everyone is happy with it, then it will be the same Git integration process to push into production. Um,
Exactly.
I do wonder at that point, let's say, a lot of the Power BI teams are not that technical,
Hmm.
and some of the processes might be overcomplicated. Like I've been thinking about whether there might be an easier kind of approach that will still allow them to tick some of the boxes, but like not be overwhelmed by that process. And I'm going to throw this at you, and I want to get your honest feedback. So if I only have one branch, the main branch, and if I only connect that with test workspace, so developers, the scenario is developers will do whatever in the development workspace, don't care. They can do the deployment into test for testing purposes whenever they want to. Like, so this part is no Git at all. Um, but once they are happy with the report, they then push it into the only branch,
Hmm.
and PR that whole thing. Um, then it will be formally in the test branch. And then someone will, once they're happy with it, someone will manually click this magic button to push whatever that change into the production environment
Yeah.
without Git. Do you think it will work? What do you think will be the main downside of that?
Um, I think that's messy, and I don't support that because again, I think developers, my personal belief is you need to learn Git because you want to version your file regardless, right? I think that's my primary driver for this. Again, we want to avoid that underscore final final scenario. To make it a bit less complicated, what could probably work as a bare minimum is that you just attach Git on development, and then moving to test and production is a UI thing that you're looking at the moment, right? So
Yep.
that means that you don't need to attach the test um, environment to the test branch. You don't need to attach the production environment to the production branch, right?
Yeah,
But then the
interesting. Yeah.
developers can still work together via Git, right? Like they can just create feature branches, create this, create that, version this, version that. But then the BAU people you mentioned earlier, they probably don't want to approve a PR to test the process, right? Developers will just click that deploy button, move it to test, and then this BAU people would want a UAT that changes
Yeah,
first, right? And then
yeah,
once they're happy, the manager then gets to click that button, deploy to production without actually having to, do
yeah,
Git again. So I think it's more
yeah.
of the latter, right? That developers need Git, and then the non-developers can get to use this feature.
True, true. But that's definitely one very interesting aspect of this. Like we mostly still talking about the Power BI world so far. And in Fabric we do have more than Power BI now. There's like warehouse, lakehouse, data pipeline, etc., etc. Right? So um, yeah. So what's the thing there in that case? Like,
Well, Well, Dave, I hope it's good that you ask about Fabric because that warrants for the next video, which we'll be talking about next week. So here's a setup that I've done similar to what you have done, but we'll be talking more about like lakehouse, notebooks, pipelines, warehouses, and like things that are supported, not supported, and stuff like that, right? And again, this is very exciting because unlike Power BI, report is just one piece of it. Like there's a bunch of different things that you can kind of like bundle together for Fabric. So, all right, we'll do this on the next episode. I'll see you then.
looking forward to it. Thanks, MJ. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.